You arrive in a city you've never visited before, you step outside, and something feels strange. You were expecting a new world, instead, you see a Starbucks, a McDonald's, a Zara, a familiar taxi app. The same glass buildings, the same advertisements, the same music playing in the background. You walk down the street and slowly realize something. You've never been here, but somehow you've already seen it. This is one of the strangest things about modern life. You can travel thousands of kilometers, cross oceans, enter another country, and still feel like you're standing inside a slightly different version of home. The signs may be in another language, the people may look different, the architecture may change, but the experience feels familiar. The airport is the same, the hotel is the same, the shopping mall is the same, even the coffee is somehow the same. And perhaps that's because, for most of human history, the world wasn't like this. A village in one valley could feel completely alien to a village just 50 kilometers away. Different food, different clothes, different buildings, different gods, different languages, different ways of understanding what life was supposed to be. The world was full of places that had never been standardized. Then, we started making everything the same. At first, this seemed like progress. It made travel easier, trade faster, communication simpler. A product made in one country could be sold in another. A person could cross an ocean and still find something familiar. The world became smaller. But something else happened. The places themselves began to disappear, not physically, something more subtle. They began to lose their uniqueness. Look around your own city. How many places could exist almost anywhere? The same glass office, the same apartment tower, the same supermarket, the same chain restaurant, the same coffee shop, the same phone in everyone's hand. You may live in a city with thousands of years of history and still spend most of your day inside spaces that could have been built yesterday. And this creates a strange emotional contradiction. We have more access to the world than any humans who came before us, but sometimes the world feels less distinct, more connected, more convenient, more familiar, and somehow less memorable. Because the question isn't simply why every city has the same stores. The deeper question is, what happens to the human mind when everywhere starts feeling like somewhere we've already been? To understand that, we have to return to a time when every place was truly its own world. Imagine being born 2,000 years ago. You might spend your entire life within a few kilometers of the place where you were born, not because you were trapped, because the world outside was enormous. A journey that takes you 2 hours today could take days. A journey that takes days could take weeks, and beyond that was practically another universe. Your village had its own rhythm, its own food, its own accent, its own stories, its own way of building houses. The people nearby knew what the seasons meant, which river flooded, which mountain was dangerous, which plants could heal you, which path disappeared during winter. Knowledge wasn't stored in databases, it was stored in places. A person didn't simply live in a place, they belonged to it. The landscape shaped their identity. You were from the valley or the coast or the mountains. Your home wasn't just an address, it was a language, a cuisine, a memory, a way of seeing the world. And because communities were separated, they evolved differently, not biologically necessarily, culturally. One valley developed one kind of bread, another developed an entirely different cuisine. One community built houses designed for snow, another built them for heat. One celebrated the arrival of spring, another celebrated the beginning of the monsoon. Human culture adapted to geography. The world was diverse because the world itself was different. For most of history, the things you consumed were connected to the place you lived. Your food came from nearby, your clothes were made nearby, your tools were made nearby, your house was built with materials found nearby. The local economy was also a local identity. Then, distance became less important, ships connected continents, trade routes expanded, spices crossed oceans, silk traveled thousands of kilometers, ideas moved with merchants, the world began to connect. And for the first time, people could experience something that had previously been almost impossible, a product from somewhere else, a food from somewhere else, an idea from somewhere else. This was the beginning of something extraordinary, and eventually, it would transform the places we called home. The first great transformation was speed. railroads, steamships, telegraphs. Suddenly, distance became cheaper. Then came mass production. Factories discovered something powerful. If you make the same thing over and over again, you can make it cheaper, much cheaper. The world began filling with identical objects, identical bottles, identical clothes, identical machines, identical buildings. Standardization wasn't exciting, but it was incredibly efficient, and efficiency changed everything. If every part was standardized, anything could be repaired. If every product was identical, anyone could buy it. If every hotel room looked the same, you always knew what you were getting. The world became predictable, and people loved it. Imagine arriving in a foreign country and finding the exact same bed you slept in last week. There is comfort in that. You don't have to understand the place understands you. This is one of globalization's greatest achievements. It made unfamiliar places feel safe, but safety has a strange side effect. It can make unfamiliar places less unfamiliar. Then came highways, airports, shopping centers, chain restaurants, hotels, supermarkets. The same companies expanded across borders, and slowly, the visual language of cities began to converge, not because anyone planned to erase local culture, but because standardized systems were simply more profitable. The local bakery had one recipe, the global chain had thousands of locations. The local hotel was unique, the global chain was predictable, the local store knew your name, the global brand knew your preferences. And one by one, the systems that connected the world also began replacing the things that made each place distinct. Then the internet arrived, and the transformation became almost complete. Now we didn't just buy the same things, we watched the same things, listened to the same music, used the same apps, followed the same celebrities, argued about the same stories. A teenager in Mumbai could spend the evening consuming the same content. As a teenager in Los Angeles, the world had never been this connected, and the world had never felt this similar. But there was one final transformation, the smartphone, because now you didn't even have to leave your city to experience everywhere. The entire planet came with you. You could see Paris from your bedroom, eat Korean food in London, watch American television in India, order products from China, talk to someone in Brazil. The physical world became global, and then our mental world did too. The strange thing about familiarity is that it feels good until there is too much of it. When everything is familiar, nothing feels special. Think about the first time you visited a truly foreign place. The signs were different, the smells were different, you didn't know how anything worked. You had to pay attention, everything demanded your curiosity. Now imagine a world where almost nothing does. You don't have to learn the language, your phone translates it. You don't need to know where to eat. The algorithm tells you, you don't need to find your way. GPS does it. You don't need to understand the local economy. Your card works. You don't even need to know the city. You can experience it through recommendations. The friction disappeared, and with it, something else may have disappeared too: attention. When every place is easy, we stop looking closely. When every experience is familiar, we stop remembering it. And when every city begins to resemble every other city, we lose one of the things that makes travel meaningful: the feeling of being somewhere else. This is why some people feel strangely homesick, even while traveling, not because they miss home, because they miss the feeling of being somewhere that matters. Somewhere with a personality, somewhere that could not be replaced. For most of human history, your neighborhood was your world. You knew who lived next door. You knew which shop sold the best bread. You knew which tree bloomed first. You knew which street flooded when it rained. You didn't need an app to tell you where you were. You knew because you belonged there. Today, we can live in a city for 10 years and barely know our neighborhood. We can order everything from strangers, talk to people on the other side of the planet, and still not know the person living next door. We gained global connection while sometimes losing local connection. And perhaps this is the hidden cost of a world that feels the same. When places become interchangeable, our relationship with place changes. A home becomes a property, a neighborhood becomes a postcode, a city becomes a market, a country becomes a destination. The deeper meaning of place slowly becomes harder to feel. Maybe this is why so many people today say something they can't quite explain. I don't feel at home, even when their house is comfortable, even when their city is safe, even when everything they need is nearby. Because perhaps home was never just where you lived. Perhaps home was the feeling that this particular place was yours and could never be replaced. The world is not going to become less connected, and it shouldn't. Globalization has given humanity extraordinary things. Medicine travels faster, ideas travel faster, people can cross continents in hours. A person born in one country can build a life in another. The world is more accessible than it has ever been. The answer isn't to go backward, but perhaps we've forgotten something along the way, the value of somewhere. A place doesn't become meaningful because it's famous. It becomes meaningful because it's specific. The bakery that only exists on your street, the tree that blooms outside your childhood home. The old man who sits on the same bench every evening, the restaurant whose owner knows your order, the road you walked 1,000 times and never thought to photograph. These things don't appear on travel lists, they don't go viral, they aren't optimized by algorithms, but they are the things that turn a location into a place. Perhaps that's what we lost. Not culture, not geography, not even uniqueness. Attention, the world is still full of places that are completely different from one another. We just became very good at looking past them. The next time you travel somewhere, you may notice something strange. The airport will probably look familiar. The hotel will probably look familiar. The apps will work. The signs will be understandable. But somewhere beyond all of that, there will still be a place that is unlike anywhere else. A street, a smell, a language, a sound, a person, a way the light falls across a building at 5 in the evening. Something that could never be copied, because perhaps the real tragedy of a connected world isn't that everywhere became the same, it's that we became so accustomed to sameness that we stopped noticing difference. For most of human history, to travel was to leave one world and enter another. Today, we can travel across the planet without ever truly leaving the world we already know. But the old world is still here, hidden in the details, waiting in the streets we rush through, waiting in the neighborhoods we barely notice. Waiting in the places that haven't yet become interchangeable. Maybe the world didn't become smaller. Maybe we just became less curious about how different it still is. And perhaps the next time you find yourself somewhere new, the most important thing you can do isn't to find the most famous place or take the perfect photograph or follow the recommendation. Maybe it's simply to stop, look around,